His eyes blurred, and for a long time he sat without moving. Then he shook his head, returned to the book, and did not put it down until he had read it through. It was as good as he had thought it would be. The prose was graceful, and its passion was masked by a coolness and clarity of intelligence. It was herself he saw in what he read, he realized, and he marveled at how truly he could see her even now. But he was not beyond it. He knew and would never be. Beneath the numbness, the indifference, the removal, it was there, intense and steady. It had always been there. In his youth, he had given it freely, without thought. He had given it to the knowledge that it had been revealed to him. How many years ago, by Archer Sloane, he had given it to Edith in those first blind, foolish days of his courtship and marriage. And he had given it to Catherine, as if it had never been given before. He had, in odd ways, given it to every moment of his life, and had perhaps given it most fully when he was unaware of his giving. It was a passion neither of the mind nor of the flesh. Rather, it was a force that comprehended them both, as if they were but the matter of love, its specific substance. To a woman or to a poem, it said simply, "Look, I am alive." This is page 259 of the novel Stoner by John Williams. It was released in 1965, and though not super successful in its initial release, it has become super popular as of late. I don't know if whether you've seen this on Book Talk or BookTube or whatever. And it might seem kind of generic. It might seem, I mean, this isn't a particularly, super unique cover, certainly. But a lot of people call it the perfect novel. And having just finished it, I can, at the very least, relate to and sort of support the praise that this book has been getting. So the book itself is about a man named William Stoner, who, for all intents and purposes, has a pretty average life. He grows up in Missouri. He goes to University of Missouri. Originally, he's going to study agriculture, but then he winds up getting really fascinated by literature, and then he winds up becoming a literature professor. And he teaches English at University of Missouri for most of his adult life. And he gets married, and he has a kid, and then he dies. And there's not really any way to spoil this. There was another review of this book recently where they made a really interesting point about it's a book that you can't spoil. Hey everyone, it's Editing Zach here. The YouTube channel, I forgot the name of it when I was filming this video. It's Owl Criticism, and he has a really great video about it's basically a review and analysis of this book as well, and I will link it below. So yeah, check that out. Thanks. And I kind of agree with that, because on the surface, it's not about anything. It's not some grand adventure. It's not some hero's journey. It is an absolutely mundane story. So why is it the perfect novel? It is simply because of how incredibly beautifully it is written. Some people have pointed out that it's very much an existentialist novel, and sort of the themes of living with the choices that you made, trying to be, active and be an active participant in the world that you live in, trying to make a difference, and questioning whether you are actually making a difference in the world. I really wanted to talk about how this impacted me, because as someone who's in academia and has certainly struggled with some similar things that the protagonist of this book has struggled with, I just found myself relating to him deeply. He's not a hero. He's not a particularly great person, but he finds something that he genuinely loves and pursues it for the rest of his life. That is English lit. He loves reading. He loves poems. He loves, it's something that he just falls in love with. The same thing happened to me with music. When I started university, I did start university doing music education, but it wasn't something that I necessarily had a love for in the way that it wasn't quite this like sort of romantic sort of falling in love thing that Stoner has with literature. In the book, he has a professor, Archer Sloane, who really becomes uh, his mentor in his earlier years, and also like really inspires him. And I can say that I've had an Archer Sloan in my life. I've had someone who was just there at the right time and really guided me, kind of in the right direction for um, what I wanted to do with my life. I feel like there's a good amount of us who we've had our fair share of probably like really crappy teachers, but there's always that one teacher that really makes a massive difference, that is just there at the right place at the right time and just guides us in the right direction, that I think leads us to a really, hopefully something really fruitful and meaningful. Even if it isn't our career necessarily, to a hobby or to just a love that we live through for the rest, that we embrace through the rest of our lives. I had an Archer Sloan type of person in my life. I had an older professor who just really encouraged me to explore what I loved, which was music, and writing about music. I loved writing about music, and it was hard for me to really embrace that side of me at first, because it just didn't seem practical. It was like, well, how am I supposed to make money off that? And I should just be a public school teacher, and that's more feasible, at least where I lived, kind of growing up in the suburbs, and that just seemed more realistic than being some sort of like journalist or even like just professional full-time musician in general. That just seemed more practical or whatever. And then I had someone who came along and really said, no, you're in love with this, with making music, with lecturing on music, with writing music, and you should pursue that. And then I did, and then I didn't really know, once I did that, it was like, I can't imagine doing anything else. And Stoner is very, because of my experience with that, I very much relate to Stoner. I should say, both the name and the author of this is very confusing. It's by a guy named John Williams, not the composer. It's called Stoner. It's not about smoking weed. So in terms of marketing or whatever, this book is maybe kind of lacking. It's kind of stayed hidden for a while, simply because I don't think on the surface it seems like much. I've read that excerpt, that paragraph from page 259, because it really highlights what I think is really kind of, or at least what I took as the most significant theme of the book. To a woman or to a poem, it said simply, "Look, I am alive." Something this book is not about. It is not about, achieving some sort of level of greatness. It is about just the greatness of being. He had struggles throughout his life. He had a failed marriage. He had a failed affair. He had a daughter that he struggled to connect to. He was very isolated. The interesting background setting of this book is that it's in between the two world wars. So when he starts his PhD, it's World War One, and then a few decades later, he's a professor, and World War II comes around, and there's a really nice point where he just sort of realizes that the world's kind of passing him by as he lives his life. And does he enjoy doing it? Yeah, of course he loves doing his job, but he also feels like he constantly lives in that state of, I don't know what you would call it, like just ennui or regret, or you find something you love and then you want to do it for the rest of your life, but then you don't quite ever feel like that's enough, and it's a very strange feeling. And once again, going back to sort of my own experiences, I feel like, I'm very glad that I chose what I did. But goddamn, dude, I'm poor. I don't make a lot of money. Am I a successful musician? No, not really. There are times where, I feel the same way that Stoner does. I feel exactly the same way, where he's just sort of like, did I make the right choice? Did I make the right choices in my life? I think the best really sort of summing up of that sort of theme is towards the end of the book, where he's dying. He has all these thoughts of regret, and just the repeated phrase of, what did you expect? And that really struck me as like, because I myself, I struggled very deeply with that feeling of regret of I wish I had chosen something differently when I was earlier. I wish I had realized this. I wish I was smarter about this. Then things would be better, then things would, but that, that really brilliant question of like, what did you expect? What did you expect life to be? Did you expect it to be perfect? Well, no, but it's just a beautiful story. It's just a genuinely, it might be a mundane story, but it is a story beautifully written, and it is a testament to the skill of John Williams as a writer. I think that's what makes it so brilliant and to some people perfect is just the fact that is that he's able to tell such a pretty like ordinary story in such an extraordinary way. I think that's what makes it worth reading. Recently, I was just curious as to if this has been or will ever be adapted into a movie. Um, I can't remember the director's name, but is currently in development with Casey Affleck as the titular the protagonist, William Stoner. That could be interesting. It's I think the same director as Atonement and Anna Karenina and a few other movies. So that guy has background in adapting novels. So I don't know how good this could be as a film, because what makes it so wonderful to read and so wonderful to experience as a story is the prose, and adapting that into a film is, I don't want to say it's impossible, but I feel like something would be lost. So I would genuinely be really interested to see, um, if slash when that actually comes out, um, how that's actually adapted. Please go read this. It's genuinely worth a read. Like, believe the hype, I would say. But understand that what you're getting with this novel is just the way it is told. I think if you are maybe an aspiring writer, this is definitely a worthy read just because of how just the prose itself is worth studying. I think. I don't know. This is just a short review, sort of discussion about Stoner by John Williams. If you like this, I'll probably do more of these sort of things. So like and subscribe and all that.